So welcome to Glenmore Park,
Yeah,
James.
yes, on
Now,
Saturday afternoon.
We're, it's May 29th, 2021. So I was just reflecting, James. We call it, back in the day, Bill and I used to call each other James. So,
There's
but this
an old anecdote associated with that, but that's a different story.
This is my good friend Bill Betts, and in 1986, 35 years ago, Bill and I climbed East End Boys.
Yeah.
And I was, kind of the newcomer in town at the time, and
met you the week before, I think.
Yeah, a week before, and we had this awesome day.
My name's Steve DeMille, and Jeff Marshall said it was okay to call you at 11 o'clock at night.
So, so 35 years ago, Yamnuska. Now, Bill, you'd had a bit of a history with the route, and you had some pre-knowledge with Urs and
whatnot. It was one of those routes that it was the legendary unfinished, uncompleted route, and I don't even know. Urs had told me there was like the resume of the who's who of climbing it. I tried to go up there. And so I had long since heard about it, and it intrigued me. But trying to get somebody else to go up there is like, oh no. And then others that went up there never even got to the high point, but still had claimed it and named it. Right, and that's a list of the who's who in the climbing fraternity of everybody that had named it and claimed it.
Now, Urs had been up there. He'd got up 2 pitches. So the first pitch of the yellow edge.
Pitch of the yellow edge.
And he'd done a full second pitch, and he'd done about 6 or 10 feet.
Couple more bolts.
Up on the third pitch, and that was Urs. Was that with Billy Davidson?
I don't know who it was. Never had that.
Yeah.
Not that I recall having that conversation with Urs. Maybe vaguely who he was up there with. But I knew about it, knew exactly where it was. I'd never done Yellow Edge, but if you've been on Yam enough, here and there and everywhere. Here's where it is.
Yeah.
I knew about it, and I'd actually hiked up a couple times with a couple guys that you and I both know that I won't mention, and they looked up and said no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And that's a disappointment, trying to get somebody to just go.
Yeah.
Right?
Now you did get up there with one of your partners.
With Pap.
Yeah. With Pap.
And that was we didn't get to the high point. Not to be critical of Pat, good climber, whatever, but it was more than he was prepared to handle, right? Yeah. Not what he wanted to do. So you kind of know that, okay, you're gonna have to have somebody good, right? Or like, why waste your time? You're not gonna get out of bed. Just go to some other route on Yam, right? Go enjoy yourself. Yeah. As I mentioned, I got the famous phone call at 11 at night, and I was already going off with Broker to have a good day on Yam, unplanned, but whatever. And I'm like, yeah, sure, join us. And we had that famous conversation. I didn't know anything about you.
No, that was a great day.
Yeah, as we're driving out, I'm thinking, I'm thinking of doing this and this. I better ask him what he can climb. Right? Oh, could you second 510? And you go, I could second 510. I'm like, well, could you lead 5.8? And you're like, yeah, I could lead 5.8. I'm like, okay. I think, well, we'll try it on for size, right? And Broker, as you know, was not into leading. He's not leading. So I knew I just assumed I had a pretty good chance of just leading everything, but double ropes and 2 guys following me up, that was normal.
Yeah.
Right. I'd done that so many times on Yam. Drag guys up. I mean, taking a guy who, I think about it now and I think, well, I'm not sure it was really rational, but he had never ever climbed before, but a pretty good athlete. And a guy by the name of Don Smith, and I took him up Call Wall, was his first route. Right? Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I remember we were going up to do missionaries.
Yeah.
And I had been up trying to find Call Wall a few weeks before, and I'd asked you, where's Call Wall? And you're like, oh, it's up there, you know, up there, left, right, around.
Yeah, just to the right of the path on the hike up.
And you go, oh, well, we'll go do that after missionaries. And I'm kind of going, okay, well, missionaries is 9 pitches. I'm kind of going, I don't know. I'm like, are you sure you were going to have time for that? Like, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'd never, you know, we'd never climbed together.
No,
before,
never at 11 o'clock the night before. Hi, how are you? Sure. Hey, see you in the morning.
So I'm kind of going, okay, interesting. Well, 9 pitch route, okay, and he wants to do a 10 pitch route after. Okay,
Yeah. Well, I knew Broker was up for it. I'd have to lead it all.
Yeah.
But I was good with that. I'd done that lots of times. And, so anyway, you remember missionaries, and it was actually the style that we did it in. It was a 4-pitch route.
The simul climbing, which I'd never done before.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I'm like, okay, this is an interesting technique.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we simul climbed missionaries, and we're at the top before noon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, probably long before noon.
Yeah.
Ran down.
Yeah.
And you said, well, let's do Call Wall now.
Yeah.
And it was a hot day. I remember Stewie grabbed the water bottles and ran down and got some water and ran
down to the
back.
spring.
And for, you know, a guy like me, an Easterner like me, I'm like, holy crap, you just did that approach twice.
That's Broker. Yeah. Yeah. He's a good athlete.
But yeah, because it was a cooking hot day on Yam, and we needed the water. And then we made, my recollection is we just made short work of Call Wall.
Yeah, it was like,
and
what's all the fuss about?
We topped out, and you're like, well, we should go do Schmiegel.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So
I think it was Broker's suggestion.
Oh, was it Broker?
And he said he'd lead.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
Because we were trashed. You and I
we
swapped a lot of leads and whatever. And Broker says, yeah, let's do one more. And he was totally into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, okay, Schmiegel. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then so we did Schmiegel, and somewhere during the day I'd said, so Bill, do you know of any new route potential? Is there any new routes that haven't been done on Yam yet? And you're like, I got something I'm going to show you.
Well, yeah. Well, by now I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is the guy that might, just, I don't know. I'd seen what you'd done, and you're totally at home, right? There was nothing we'd done in the day that you had even blinked at, right? I'm like, okay, because Broker wasn't the guy, because he wouldn't take the sharp end, right? So fair enough. I wanted a partner that I could potentially swap leads. I'd heard about the route, been up and seen the overhangingness and whatever. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe this is the guy. And just met you, but sure, let's give it a go. And
well, I remember we walked underneath and you pointed it out, and I still remember it clearly like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that's the line. And I'm
like,
looking up. But Bill, it's a crack line.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know. I said, but Bill, it's a crack line. That means there's pro.
And I'm going, yes.
That means there's gear. Like I was envisioning blank walls, limestone, no gear. But at the time, I thought, if there's a crack there, I know we can climb it.
Yeah.
If there's a crack, one way or another.
Yeah.
Free aid, frig, whatever. So I was excited. You were
totally stoked. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know, I'm really scared, Bill. There was none of that. It was like, oh man.
So it was the fall.
Pull the lever, release the tiger, right?
Yeah, I remember that clearly. And then it was the week later, the following Saturday.
Yeah.
We headed up.
Yeah. 8 and free gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Yeah. Well, what's your three greatest memories from the day there, Bill?
Well, well, three greatest memories. I mean, there were a lot of great memories, and the you know you you took the first yellow edge pitch and scooted up, and I'm like, okay. And I followed with the pack, with the gear, with a ton of gear, right? I seconded, and then I'm thinking, okay, I still don't really know. I'd been part way up that pitch, and I kind of thought, okay, let you lead it and see how you do, and then maybe we might have to swap leads. But for the new ground, I'm kind of thinking, okay, we'll see. I want somebody fresh for the new ground, right? And but you just scooted up that pitch. Now, there had been a discussion. A certain high-profile member of the climbing community had said that because he couldn't lead it, it had to be 5'11", right? And no, it was the other way around. Sorry, it was that it was only 5'10". He had said it was only 5'10".
Yeah, you had said, oh yeah, it's 5'10" up through there.
Yeah.
It's a 5'10" pitch, was what you said.
Yeah. And your comment was, after you led it, was, wow.
Well, at the first part of the business, and I remember this clearly, is I got a piece in and I'd gone up 3 moves.
Yeah.
And then down climbed them, and they were harder than anything I'd done all year at that point.
Yeah.
And I yelled down. I'd been on a lot of 5'10" ground at Grotto Canyon and Barrier and whatnot already. I'm like, so what did you say? You said this was 5'10". Right. You're like, yeah, 5'10".
Yeah.
Like,
well,
okay.
Yeah. An authority figure had said it's 5'10". Who would I be to possibly go against that assessment, right? So, but then I seconded.
Yeah, it was it was a stiff pitch. Like,
stiff pitch.
It was 5'11", and then I took one hang, I don't know, 6-7 feet from the station.
Yeah.
So we graded that 11 A0. 5'11" A0.
Yeah.
One hang.
Yeah. And I tried to free it on top rope, but I had the pack with all the gear, and I just couldn't. It's like, so
and it's so overhanging.
It's so overhanging, right?
When your pack's pulling you off, and we had an aid rack, we had Atrias, Jumars, we had the whole show, and it was probably a 40-pound pack we had.
It was. Heavy pack, yeah. And but I got up there, and I'd been partway up that pitch, but never been. That was now my high point, right? And you lean back and you look up, and you could see the 2 bolts, and a great belay, right? Well, these days everybody would replace the bolts immediately, but back in those days, when you anticipating belaying on small wires, having 2 bolts at a belay was like luxury. Like a nuclear bomb wouldn't remove these bolts. That was our assessment in the day. That was the view. And so great, we got a great belay, and then part of my thinking was that, okay, this guy's on fire, and you were chomping at the bit, and I'm like, okay, when the fire burns out, I'm gonna have to take over, but I want to keep that fire going. If you still got the fire, go, and away you went. Right? And I also looked at, I knew and understood and had read a lot about double rope systems, and the chance of failure is almost 0, right? At the time, I don't know what the numbers are now, but at the time the UIAA had said that they had never had a fatality as a result of the failure of both ropes in a double rope system. And I was aware of that, and I also knew that this was a total air fall, and there was no way of hitting the ground, and I had 2 bolts. So I had the comfiest belay in the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know, not that fear was ever part of the equation, but I was not in, there was no fear, no nothing. It was like, wow, this is fantastic, right? And, you know, I couldn't really see because there's a little overhang there, but, you know, off you go on belay, and you went over the little bulge, and, you know, you can tell clip 1, clip 2, right? You're stopping clipping those bolts.
Yeah, and I was on aid, right off the station was on aid, and it got, you know, and then there was one in a single aid placement.
Yeah.
And then it was free climbing after that, which shocked me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was expecting an aid pitch,
Yeah.
and I did the 3 or 4 points of aid, and then, okay, this is free climbing.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, I'm belaying, and I'm kind of sensing, okay, there's that first bolt, there's the second bolt, and kind of assessing, and then I started smiling to myself, going, okay, he's past there. This is new ground, and I knew it was new ground, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, kind of thinking to myself, okay, what have I got here, right? And it just like kept going, yeah. And so yeah, that was yeah, that was that was an interesting door to walk through.
Yeah,
Right. That having been up there with a couple of guys that wouldn't even harness up.
Well, and after that point of aid, the climbing down below on pitch 2 was actually harder.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
which was interesting for me at the time, going, okay, well, I was, you know, this was the high point. This is where everybody stopped.
Right, and you wonder, and it would be interesting to talk to whoever got to that high point, is that they obviously climbed that previous pitch,
Yeah, yeah.
and yet they stopped there. So they just ran out of time, never got back to it. Climbing
Well,
partners
and
changed.
it was steep. It was exposed, and I recall after, penultimately after we finished the route, or on the last pitch, I remember going, you know, Bill, every pitch on this route is overhanging,
Yeah.
or has an overhang in it.
Yes. Yeah.
And which is interesting for the.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's an.
So it's pretty
overhang,
exposed, right? You're out, you're.
It's pretty
staring,
exposed. Yeah.
looking down
Yeah.
at the trail.
Well, you know, here's a perspective: is that for the first time in my entire climbing, call it a career or whatever, it wasn't really a career, it was just a passion. I was actually where I wanted to be with the right partner for the first time. It was like,
Well,
now I'm with the right guy at last.
Well, and we both didn't know each other, so there's that
Yeah.
tentative. Okay, well,
Yeah.
is he going to start getting scared? Nope, not yet. I'm like, okay, and you know, we both climb with guys. As soon as you start getting scared, the day is nearly over.
We can throw, it changes the whole psyche.
But
yeah.
that wasn't.
Never entered into the
Nope,
day.
nope.
There was no fear during the day. It was totally at home, and I was totally comfortable that we had the competent skills to retreat if that was required. I wasn't intimidated by the potential of retreat. There was no chance of any kind of catastrophic leader fall other than some major airtime, but the ropes would hold. The blaze were good. Like, let's go. And you were on fire. And I'm like, boy, as long as that fire lasts, I'm going to let you keep lighting that fire, right? And you were on fire.
Yeah. In hindsight, it's one of my best days as a climber ever.
Yeah, just out of the
Everything's
box.
just coming together.
Just woke up
Just
in the morning.
bang.
You had no idea that route was there.
No.
Right? It was like, oh, Bill has an idea. Okay, yeah, I'll go with you,
let's
Bill.
go have a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, standing at the bottom. Bill, it's a crack route. Yeah, I know. No, it's a crack route. Yeah.
No, I remember like it was yesterday. I mean, there's lots of days I don't remember from the last 35 years, but that day I can remember every 10 meters of that whole route clearly. Like it was.
You know, just feeling like, at last, I'm where I want to be. This, you know, you read about Joe Brown and you read about whatever, and I'm like, yeah, this is home.
Yeah, right on.
So now somewhere, and I think it was on that pitch where the big leader fall
Yeah, so the leader fall is pitch 4.
Right.
So the pitch at the pitch following the pitch that had the high point.
Right.
Pitch 4.
Okay. Yeah. So the next pitch. So you brought me up, and I jugged after that, right? And so I jugged up to the next pitch. I don't even remember what was in the belay, but I was perfectly happy with it. It never entered my mind there was anything wrong with the belay, but it was a trad belay.
Yeah.
No bolt, no pin.
No.
Right. So, but we were both good with it. Never even came up in discussion. Jugged up, and we're just looking up what's the next pitch.
Yeah.
And so that next pitch put you on belay, and off you went. And again, I didn't see the fall, but I was comfortable enough in the nature of the fall that I knew there was no way that the belay would fail, and no possible chance you were going to hit the ground. And because it was overhanging, there was nothing to hit on the way down. Any fall was an air fall, right? So when you fell, you pulled a piece, because I felt the rope go whack and then loose again, and there's only one thing that can do that, right? I knew that in real time. I knew, okay, yeah, he's falling again. Yeah.
Fists came out of that fist crack. I had the number 4 friend at my feet, and they were creeping out, and I think I yelled down, "Coming off, Bill."
Yeah, I might have heard something, but
anyway, I was trying to grab a fist jam, missed it on the way by. The friend pulled, and then I landed actually slightly below you at the station.
Boy, I don't remember the blow. I remember thinking, maybe by the time the rope stretched, I remember thinking to myself that this would be the first time in my life, if it happens, that somebody will fall by me. And in real time I was thinking, but I'm totally comfortable with that the belay was going to hold. There was no risk other than the sheer thrill of this massive leader fall, if that was to occur, and I didn't want to miss it, right? Like that phenomenon of having a guy fall by you in a totally safe environment. Right? So I'm like Mr. Bulldog at the rodeo with the rope, waiting for the rope to come tight, with my eyes just open, waiting to see. I want to see you go by, right? And I don't remember that happening, but then you came to a stop, and right, we had a little bit of communication, and I think we did that same thing where you had talked earlier about checking to see if the other guy's scared. And I was wondering, did this really freak you out? Was it my turn to take over? Or because you're too freaked out, which was totally reasonable if you were. And I also wanted to convince you that I was totally fine. And we traded some words, and I could tell by your tone you were fine.
Well,
and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine too.
My recollection is I was maybe 6-8 feet to your left.
Yeah.
Climber's left, slightly below you, upside down.
Yeah.
And I righted myself back up.
Yeah, I sort of remember that. You didn't fall by me, but you were...
Unclipped the friend from the rope that had now slid down, put it on the rack, looked at you and said, "You okay, Bill?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "I'm okay."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Okay, I better get back up there before I get scared."
Yeah. And I didn't tell you at the time, but I've told you since that actually I'd been pulled back into the rock, and I kind of had a little bit of blood trickling down my back, but I didn't want to tell you because that would be like, "No, I'm good."
Oh, no.
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was sort of like, and we estimated the fall that was about 80 feet.
It was a long fall.
So
and
25-meter fall. 25-meter fall.
Right. So with the first part of the fall before you loaded the friend and pulled it, was I had no sense of that. Right. I don't recall hearing you. I'm coming off or whatever. Yeah. But I've always been an attentive belayer, so there's no debate that I had yet.
Yeah.
But when that, everything goes whack and then loose again. Right. Yeah. And that's why I know. And it took a long time for that rope to come tight again, right? It's like literally I'm going, okay, should be coming tight now, right? Like it was not enough time to assess that, yeah, he's flying through the air for sure, right? It's airtime, right? Real-time airtime.
Yeah.
And that's all on new ground, right?
Yeah.
On the sharp end. And but you got right back on. You were unfazed. Up you went, and obviously went right by wherever you had come out
Yeah,
the second time.
and protected a little more conservatively.
Yeah.
I worked in some stoppers, and I may have put the friend in, but and then I aided up to the state. The last sort of 15 feet I aided.
Okay. Yeah.
And up to the belay, and so a little more conservative. Like, okay, didn't want to have to reclimb that a third time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just tactics, right?
But yeah, that was it was a hell of a pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hell of a pitch. Yeah.
Which brought us under the big roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
so I jogged up, and this was one of those things. I jogged up, and I look, and I see 7 small wires, right? And that was the belay, and they were equalized, and it was artful, and there was nothing else, right?
Yeah.
And I was totally comfortable with that, right? That I'm like, okay, yeah, it's all good, but you know, then we sort of assess the situation, looking at going over the roof, right? Going to go over the roof, and you know, several funny parts of the conversation at that point. And a little bit of consternation on your face.
It's going to be aid. Like
For sure.
Aid, yeah,
for sure. So I'm looking at it, and 7 small wires, all for a downward pull. Right, and I'd never experienced it, but I'd certainly heard of the potential that the leader takes a fall, pulls the belayer up, which pulls the pieces out, and then you all are going for the ground.
Yeah.
Right? And so I said, we're putting a bolt in.
Yeah.
Right? I had a hand drill, and the reason I wanted the bolt was for the upward pull.
Yeah.
And I positioned it particularly that I was on the wires. I positioned the bolt below, so that in the event of a leader fall, it would stop me from doing an upward pull, but I was still loaded on the wires.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's all good. And of course, when it was in, I clipped in, and you immediately yanked out 4 wires, saying, well, we won't be needing these. Right? And I'm like, okay. It's sort of the unanticipated outcome, right? Okay.
I might need those upstairs.
Well, in honesty, I immediately realized that, okay, yeah, it's fair enough. You need those. Like 7 of your small wires are already consumed.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that fair assessment. Right? And I've got a bolt. And in those days, compared with small wires, a bolt was pull up your 4x4, hook up the chain.
Yeah.
Right? And it's odd now with some of the major bolts that go into the rock, and guys are all nervous because I'm clipping in an old bolt. And man, compared with a small number 4 wire, those bolts were so bomb-proof. And that bolt, when it went in, was bomb-proof. Whatever it's like years later, they deteriorate, they decline. Right?
Yeah.
And then you asked me the funny question, Bill, have you ever done any aid climbing? Right? And I started laughing. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And you don't know why I'm
And
laughing.
I'm looking at you going, why is he laughing?
And you didn't find out why I was laughing until years later.
No, it was
Don't
like,
ask me that now, I said.
Yeah, don't ask me that now.
Yeah.
And you laughed.
And
your
I
head
laughed my head off.
off. And then it wasn't until we were having a cheeseburger somewhere. And I'm
Years
like,
later.
15 years later, I'm like, so
Yeah.
Bill, you know, why did you start laughing?
Yeah, and then I told you, well, you know, there we are driving through when I proposed to my wife, we're driving through the North Cascades in a snowstorm. And we'd had a fight about something and whatever, and sort of made up, and just got out of the car to look at the view, and I said, hey, will you marry me? And she goes, don't ask me that now. And I was thinking she didn't want to marry me. And she goes, no, don't ask me that in a snowstorm. Wait till there's some romantic place. Don't ask me that now. And that's don't ask me why I thought of that when you said, Bill, have you ever done any aid climbing? And I started laughing and saying, don't ask me that now.
Well, because I'm looking at, I'm clipped into all these pieces, right? Or
yeah.
This is going to be a science project here,
yeah.
and there's literally almost, almost no stance. We're hanging stance.
Oh, it's totally hanging belay.
There's an eighth of an inch foothold.
To put your
like
lip of your rock shoe on.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's okay.
Oh, it's a hanging belay for sure. Yeah. No, look at, and the ropes are hanging free.
Yeah.
Right, like just, and if you drop a pebble, it's just gonna hit the ground. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Right, it was actually, I found it quite comforting because there's nothing to hit on the way down.
Yeah.
For the leader, it's safe, man.
Yeah.
Right, and so many of the hardcore guys doing really hard stuff today on overhanging stuff know that it's inherent in them. They're comfortable with the rope systems, and they know they're not going to hit anything on the way down. You know, that's a good situation. So anyway, you know, we chatted a little bit. You were a seasoned aid climber, and I had done every practicing aid climb practice everywhere. I knew aid systems, and I was very confident that if I needed to, I would have given it a shot. I have no idea if I could have gone around the roof, but you strapped on. You were still on fire.
Yeah.
Right, and you strapped on the gear, and around you went, just rope paying out, you know, carabiners snapping because there weren't ovals, right? You know, and as I've always kind of taunted and teased you a little bit, is your aid climbing system perhaps wasn't the most refined and best in the world, but you were the best at that aid climbing system of anybody in the world. Like, you were so good at the way you worked your system, it didn't matter. You were going.
Yeah, there's carabiners and a daisy chain of carabiners and 2 HRAs,
yeah.
and
you were going.
The pretty rudimentary.
Yeah.
No fifi hooks or anything like that.
Yeah, no.
But
and if I remember, small knife blades going around.
It was tied off blades.
Because I had to remove them on the way.
Tied off blades around the roof, and you know, expanding flakes and tied off blades around the roof.
Yeah.
To a good number 3 friend placement. And then above there, then it was more free climbing.
Yeah.
And I remember charging up that free section and thinking, oh, that was 5.7.
Yeah.
And when I went back later, 11 years later, with Andy, learning that section was 5.10.
Yeah.
So I was.
You were totally at home.
I was, I mean, it was
totally
practically a religious experience for me.
Yeah.
Called that pitch 5.7, I think A3.
Yeah, at the time.
And at the time, and when we went back, it's like, well, actually, no, it would have been 5.10 A3.
Yeah.
But.
And so then, you know, on belay, and I aided across the aid section, and you know, I had a cleaner beaner and a sling, and I was totally comfortable with it. I'd pull myself in, and you know, I got double ropes, and I'd beat on that pin till it came out. I'd go for that big swing, right? Like, because there's nothing to hit.
Yeah.
Right? Go for the big swing, and then I'd have to jug up to the next beaner and do it all again, and you know, and then once I'm around the corner, I just jugged up to the belay, and there you were, big stance.
Yeah, quite a good ledge there.
Yeah, good.
First real big ledge.
First ledge on the yeah. And so nice big ledge, and so then I thought, okay, and I sort of sensed you were getting a bit chuffed. Right? Fuck, you'd led everything to that point.
Yeah, I think
not a complaint.
We were up, sitting on that ledge, and I was feeling a little chuffed. I don't mind telling you. I remember, and
I thought, okay, now, as I had always planned, now it's time to take the baton.
I think I'd made some comment. I could see the top, and I'm feeling chuffed, and I'm like, you know, Bill, do you ever notice that the climb is never over when you want it to be?
When you want it to be, yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm worked now.
Yeah.
And give me the rack.
Yeah, well, it's my turn, right?
Yeah.
And I had always anticipated, you know, when the time came, time for my turn, time to contribute, right? And you know, some tactical errors. I wasn't sure if it was, you know, looking up at that funky corner, and was it aid or was it free? And I just wasn't sure. So I took the aid and the free rack, you know, and I had double
bandoliers.
Oh yeah, and a lot of gear, right? And you know, I again, you know, a trad belay, but I don't remember that belay being in question. We were both fine with it. We had lots of trad experience, so off I went, and I think I had a couple of pieces of aid, and I had another one up. It was kind of a gnarly little corner with little nubbins and whatever on it, but I, you know,
Popcorn crack.
popcorn, yeah,
popcorn,
that's a, yeah. So I put a friend in, I don't know, maybe a number 2 or a 2.5, something like that, put it in, loaded it, and off I came. I still had the sling, which I was using aiding to the piece below.
Yeah.
And as evidence of just how good it was, is that it held the fall with a direct
on the sling,
yeah. And distorted the beaner, which I still own to this day. And that shows just how good that piece was.
Yeah, the forces were crazy.
And it still held the fall, so I was totally safe, right? Like if it held that fall, it would have held a leader fall from 100 feet up, right?
Yeah.
And but from that point, I decided it was time to free. So with all of that crap on, I freed all the rest of the route.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
What would you grade that at today?
It's 5'11".
5'11".
Yeah.
So on-site 5'11" with a double aid rack, and I freed it. And when I pulled up to the belay, I was pretty tired.
Yeah.
Man, my everything's gone out of the muscles, right? And but you know, I did my part.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a tough pitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a burly pitch.
It was a burly pitch.
Yeah.
And with all that gear on.
And the end of a long, you know, it's the end of a long day.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
long day, a lot of climbing.
A lot of climbing. Yeah. But the day wasn't over.
No.
Yeah. And so you know, you came up, and you know, we assessed the situation, and I'm thinking that I should take this next pitch as well by rights, but I wanted to rest. I was chuffed, and you said, oh, well, you know, I'll give it a go, and off you went. You just, you know, you were almost singing. Really, honestly, you were singing and dancing, right? Because you were so happy at the progress of the route.
Oh, yeah.
You sensed victory.
Yeah.
Right? We both did. Like.
Well, and there was another overhang,
Yeah.
right? Like off on that last pitch. This is pitch 7 now.
Yeah.
So I think I looked over, and that's when I said, you know, Bill, every pitch on this route is overhanging or has an overhang.
Yeah.
As I'm putting in a piece, now that one was only a 5'9" overlap, but it was still, you know, 5'9" and an
well,
overhang.
at the time, just because it wasn't quite as steep as the other pitches we've done, we just assumed it was 5'8". But your assessment of the grade on that pitch?
Yeah, I think it was 5'9". I think it's 5'9".
5'9", yeah. Wasn't a pushover, but
yeah.
But you walked up it. Like you, by now, I think we both had a sense that we've got this route. Like we're not wrapping off for any reason now.
Yeah.
I don't care if we spend the night out. I'm not going down, right?
Yeah.
And victory is at hand. And so, yeah, and then, you know, we topped out and...
packed up, hiked down to the car, and my recollection is we left the car about 7:30. We arrived back at the car at 7:30. It was 12 hours car to car.
Car to car, yeah.
And we drove back to Calgary and went to Sam's Deli for a cheeseburger and a beer afterwards.
Perfect.
And it's June, so the sun's still out.
Yeah.
Like having a cheeseburger.
Yeah. How was your day?
Sun's still shining.
How was your day? Pretty good.
Yeah.
One of the better days ever.
Gold.
Yeah.
That's gold.
Yeah.
One of my best days ever as a rock climber.